Welcome to Hope Shot Recovery. I'm Sonia. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Today, I have my very good friend Tori on. Thank you so much for joining me today, Tori.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. So, Tori's going to tell her story, and let's just get right to it. So, let's start from the beginning. Where did your addiction start at?
My addiction started about, we'll just go with years, 2016. It started when I was trying to, the goal was to lose weight in the beginning. So I was taking, pills for that. And then someone introduced me to the other form of the pill I was taking, the street form, and quickly spiraled from there. And within about 6 months, I was using a needle and using heroin, and my kids were taken. Like, it happened very, very fast.
Wow, that's so crazy. So you didn't start out like I did, like as a kid experimenting with drugs and then started early. Like you started later in life, right?
Oh, I was 30, 29. I grew up in a Christian home. Drinking and drugs were bad. That we didn't do that. I didn't see people doing it. I wasn't around people doing it. I messed around with like weed and drinking in high school, but never really liked it. And but as I got married, that ended very badly. I've been in some really doozy relationships with men. So after I had 4 kids, got divorced, and met this guy, it was like, at the time, like some kind of dream come true. And I didn't really think anything of it. I just was still, I was doing it and I was going to work and I was like, I feel great. I'm awake. I can get things done. I have a lot of energy, and it was just, it was just awesome. And until I stopped using it for a couple days, and I'm like, woo, I feel like death. So I needed more. And then it just, after, getting arrested and going to jail, I think I went 6 times in 2 years. I didn't really, it all went down and spiraled so fast that I didn't even, it made my head spin. It made my head spin.
Wow, that's so crazy. And you know what's interesting? What you said about when you started taking pills, it was like to lose weight. And that's very common. And for me, like that was a trigger when I was in my addiction is I knew that I could lose weight and I could stay at a low weight when I was, doing meth or whatever. Actually, it didn't matter what I did, as long as I was doing some kind of drug, I
Right.
was able to maintain a certain weight. So I think that that's a trigger for a lot of people.
Oh, most definitely. And the guy that I was with right before I started even using it, but he was an alcoholic, and he would tell me, if you lost 50 pounds, then I'll marry you. That's what he said to me when he was putting a ring on my finger. Said, if you lose 50 pounds, then we'll get married, because at that point you'll be good enough. And so it was already in my head that that's what I had to do to get anybody to love me anyways. So it became after I'd started losing the weight, though, that wasn't even on my mind anymore. It was just feeling better, because I would feel like crap if I didn't, and I was taking pills for my kids, causing them issues in school, just, trying to go jump through different doctors and different hoops. And, nobody knew at that point. They would ask, my mom was like dumb to the fact that I would even do anything like that. She's like, well, why are the kids running out of medicine so fast? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just the doctor and the prescription Medicaid's all screwed up. I had like all these excuses. And, but when it came to the real hard drugs, it messed me up. I couldn't work. I couldn't function. I lost everything very quick. Like, June is when I started using, and by December, we were homeless, live in my car on New Year's, and my kids were taken by the state on January 7th.
Oh
Boom,
my
boom, boom.
goodness.
It happened very quick.
Yeah, that is a really fast progression because when I started, it took me about, I don't know, well, maybe about 12 years before like I got my kids taken away and all of that stuff. So, okay, so it started as pills, right? And like different prescriptions that was all legal, right? If you were getting
Right.
them for you, you were getting them for the kids. So, what made you decide to up the ante, so to speak?
Well, I mean, I don't blame the guy that I was with, because now being in recovery, I understand he was in the middle of his addiction too. However, he did know that I was not
Mhm.
anything like that. So it was like, oh, well, let's try this, because I would get, meth made me way too, I'm already very high strung. so so it started to really, really bother me. And I didn't like being up too much. I didn't like, so he was like, oh, well, I'll just try this, this will bring you down. I'm like, okay, down. Let's go down. And then it was like, go up and then down and up and then down. And then this is a better way to get your high. And then needles that was the only way that I could even get high. I tried to do it any other way, and it just didn't work, didn't have the same effect. So it just happened really, it was bad. It just, and my kids saw it. So, when they came I called DCF for help.
Okay.
I asked
Mhm.
them to help me. Um, so they were going to come and just temporarily take them into custody while I got help. Well, when they went into custody with the state, my kids told them what was going on, that that I got an infection in my arm from my boyfriend doing this, and he beat me till I passed out. Like, they told them all of that. So at that point, they came out of the interview room with Zach, and they were like, okay. They told my parents, they're like, if you guys aren't going to take them, we are. I didn't show up to the appointments, like I was supposed to in the beginning, and it took me way much longer than it should have to get them back. But that was the point in switching to a harder drug, was so that I wouldn't be so high from so retarded saying it. Like, it sounds so dumb, but it was serious at the time, like, for my body. Like, I couldn't be that high anymore. So
Yeah.
let me come down. My watch is talking to me.
Yeah, no, actually that makes sense. And I'm sure many people that are watching this can relate to that because that's how I lived too. It was like come up and then come down and then
Yeah.
go up and then come down. And eventually it was just like this cycle that you're always on. And if you don't have it, you're sick. So you need one, you need the other. And then what happens is obviously you can't afford it all the time because things change, right? So
Right.
how were you able to sustain yourself? I mean, was this guy, first of all, this guy, I don't like him. I don't like what he said to you, and I don't like that he played such a role in that. But so where was he at during all of this, like when it started to get really bad?
He was there. I didn't know I had no, like I said, hold on, I'm trying to make sure my computer stays plugged in. I had no street smarts. I was not well versed in it. He, on the other hand, had been an addict since he was a young teenager. He was the same age as me, and so he knew the people, he knew where to get it, he knew how to get it, but eventually started stealing. And as crazy as it may sound, he taught me how to steal. He gave me Xanax, and he was like, "How do you feel?" And I would be like, "Woo, I can do it. Just
Mhm.
give me wings." And I was stealing. I was stealing from everywhere. Walmart. We have Pier Park here, which is like a really, the Simon Mall place. And I mean, I got very good at it. Scary. Even now, going in those places, I'm like, I'm paying. I promise. My checkbook. Hold on. But but it was and that's how we got it. And if I had like a moment of like, whoo, I can't do this today, it was like, oh, well, you just can't do anything to support your habit. You don't even help. You don't even, it was just like we were in some kind of weird marriage where I was sitting on my butt and not helping contribute to my household or something. It was crazy how serious he was about it.
Wow.
So, but it kind of became like, okay, I'm doing this, but I don't want to use it all on drugs. I'm like, I'm hungry. I need gas in my car. I'm tired. I need a hotel room. Like, it became like, I wanted to use it for both. Like
Hmm.
I didn't want to use it all for, he was just like, no, it's all going. I'm like, how are we going to drive? We're driving on E, knowing we don't have gas to get back from where we're going. It was like this, somewhere in my subconscious, I was still there, the smart,
Yeah.
responsible adult that I had used to be. And I'm like, this is not working. How is this working? How is this working for you? But my body was like, you have to have these drugs. So don't leave him. Don't leave his side, and when I was raped, and it happened to be a night where me and him were fighting. I didn't have a place to live. My dad took my car because it was in his name. So he was like, I don't want you out riding around, with him and high and drunk or whatever you're doing. And so we were walking, and after it had happened, I met up with him, but by the police station. And he was just like, oh, so you just basically went and did that with somebody else, you just went and had sex with somebody else. And I'm like, I'm telling you what happened. And so that's the kind of person that he was. Even though I was going through something so horrific, all he could say was, oh, so you just went and got mad at me and went and did. I'm like, no, I wouldn't have come and told you.
Right.
So I got really in a really dark place. And meanwhile, I don't know where my kids are. My family doesn't know what's going on. And you could tell people to this day all these stories, and they're just like, Kay and Vic's daughter, Tori, you're talking about the right person? Because they're like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. And it doesn't discriminate.
That's right. Exactly. It doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, what color you are, what your gender is, none of that matters. Addiction will take, doesn't matter how much money you have. I mean, I have seen in my addiction some doctors and lawyers, right, doing the same things that I was doing. So, okay, so you called DCF on yourself and they came and got your kids, but you didn't stop right away after that.
No.
So tell me those last couple of months, like and what made you decide to stop and how you reached out to ask for help.
I was in Sarasota and I did the Salvation Army rehab. That's a 4 months. And I can now remember some things that I took away from that. At the time, my kids were up here in Panama City with different people. I was sober, but I didn't see them. I didn't talk to them. They weren't in my life. I was watching the girls around me, with their kids on Sundays and whatnot. And so I just worked. I came to visit for Christmas, but that was it. I went back down there because I ended up in Hillsborough County because that's where my original charges were
Mhm.
for a bad check. So every time that I violated here, I had to be sent back down there. Anyways, the
Right.
hurricane hit up here, and I just ended up staying down there. Anyways, I said all that because when I relapsed when I was at Living with Dignity, and I went back to jail, but this time Bay County had a warrant for me. So they brought me back up here. But when I got out of jail from here, I went and moved in with a friend. He was a functioning alcoholic.
Mhm.
And he had a friend that came over and he was using meth. And I was like, might as well. Nobody cares. Nobody's checked in on me. Nobody, even though I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. I didn't have a job. I wasn't making visitation with my kids. I wasn't, so I just went like way off the rails. At this point, I overdosed, I think 4 times before,
Wow.
like between August and November.
Mm.
And the last month, I was with some people I didn't know. in a totally different state. They dropped me off at their friend's house. It sounds like such a shit show. But they dropped me off at their friend's house because they, couples, I wasn't a couple with anybody at this time. It was just me, and it was a guy's house. So the couple that dropped me off, they were having their own spin out issues,
Mhm.
and so they left, and I was just in this cabin in the woods, just like where even am I? Ran out of
Right.
drugs. I was out, and he was the guy that lived there was like, I can't believe, after he's, twisting his little pipe all day, he's like, I can't believe you're using a needle. That is just trashy. That's terrible. I can't believe you would ever do that. People that do that are not welcome here. And I'm like, well, I'm in the middle of the woods. I would leave if I could.
Right.
So after I got done with my last of my drugs, I was like, is Thanksgiving like this week? Like, I didn't even know. I got on a phone and I was like, wow, it's Thanksgiving. I had missed messages and phone calls with my kids. I was supposed to be there. They went, Zach was in Tallahassee in like Madison County, which is like 2.5, 3 hours away from here. Like almost the whole time he was in foster care at different
Mm.
group homes because they couldn't handle him. He
Wow.
was never in like a house. He was always in a group home setting. So they had brought him all the way from wherever he was to Panama City because I told her I would be there, and I didn't show up.
Mm.
So I did this several times. I never signed up for any of the classes or anything I was supposed to do. So my mom goes to church with the CEO of the rehab I ended up going to, and she got her phone number and gave it to me. And it took me like 2 weeks to call her. But I think at this point it had been those 2 weeks, and I was in this cabin, and I was like, something's got to give. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, what is it going to take for me to get better? And so my first thought was, okay, rehab. I'll get food, I'll get sleep. If nothing else, I'll just have a place to lay my head for a couple weeks, and I'll be back in Panama City. So my mom prayed about it. They're very good Christians. They prayed about it, and my dad didn't want her to come get me, but he did. He let her come get me from this cabin, and we didn't really talk. She fed me, gave me a cigarette, and took me to rehab. And it wasn't until like, I think I have my journal still from Florida Springs. But it was like the 14th day, maybe, because I had to detox for like 10 or 11 days.
Wow.
And finally on like the 14th day, we were in a group. And the guy doing the group was my therapist. And he was like, he was talking about forgiveness. And I had held on to some unforgiveness towards my dad for years. He didn't even do anything to me. He didn't even do anything to me. It was between him and my mom. And I just held on to that for some reason. He got forgiveness and was forgiven, and I just held on to it. He continued living his life and being a happy family, and I'm over here like, I'll show
Yeah.
you. So anything he ever tried to tell me, I always dismissed because, you did this to my mom. You can't be a good human. So I don't know, it just hit me in the middle of that group, and I just started crying, and I was like, I gotta forgive my dad, because I can't receive any of this awesomeness and be free until I let go of that crap. And there were other stuff that I needed to let go, but that was the main one. That was the main thing that I had to let go of. And I had to stop controlling things, and trying to put the game together like I wanted it to look. And in that very moment, I kid you not, like it was like a physical weight left my shoulders. And I was there for 52 days. I was in that rehab for 52 days. And from that day until the day that I got out, I did nothing but journal. I did my step work. I did what I was supposed to do. I shared. Even when I made a mistake and my therapist confronted me, I didn't try to deny it. I was like, yep, I did that. Are y'all kicking me out? And he's like, no, this is all we want. We want you to make a mistake, be confronted, and be able to accept responsibility for it and change that behavior. That was what
Mhm.
they were looking for. So that's what I did. But I think I got out on January the 19th, but on January the 8th, my DCF caseworker came in to the rehab. She came to visit and told me that there were 6 weeks before they filed for termination of parental rights. And that they were adopting my kids out. They already were going for a goal of adoption. And I was like, oh my God. So all of this was for nothing. I'm like, so they're taking my kids either way. So I got to decide now if I'm sober for them or if I'm sober for me, you know. So I did still have 2 other kids that were not in the system. So Amy, the CEO, at the time, she was just the clinical director. And she came and sat with me, and she was like, it was a Friday. And she's like, okay, you have today and this weekend to be upset because this is upsetting news. And she's like, but on Monday, it's time to hit the ground running. You're making a list of things that you need to do immediately when you get out of here. What is at the top? What are the things that you have to do or get started? Don't think about the termination. Just think about the things that they are asking you to do in order to get your kids back. Because in my head, it wasn't achievable on paper. It's like, I got to do that. One class is 6 weeks, and so I got out. I went to a transitional, more like a homeless shelter, but they had different women, like domestic violence, drug abuse. They had all kinds of people living there. And I was on house arrest. No, I wasn't on house arrest yet because I hadn't gone back to jail. But I had to go back to jail after I got out of rehab and started doing my case plan and doing everything right. I had a warrant that I had to take care of from an appointment I missed back in November. So I had to go to jail. In Bay County, when you have a VOP, this was my 5th one. When you have a VOP,
wow.
usually it's about 8 or 9 weeks. Your court dates are like 8 or 9 weeks out. I went in on February 4th. My court date wasn't till March 9th. So after my first appearance, I was like, okay, God, if this is what I have to do, you have to clean up the wreckage of your past. So if this is what I have to do to clean it up, and this is where I have to be, I'm willing to be here and just be. And I went to sleep. The next day, a public defender came in and he was like, I can get you out by Friday. This was on a Wednesday. And he was like, if you agree to this community control plea. And I was like, can I kiss you? He was like my angel. He's a very good public defender here. Never heard his name before, but after that, I heard his name everywhere. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do house arrest. I'm doing fine, whatever. So I got out that Friday, and I never stopped. I got a job. Some people that own a business at my church let me come work for them, knowing all the things that I had to do. House arrest. I had to go to the jail every weekend for 5 weekends and do 8 to 4 Saturday and Sunday to go pick up trash. Was part of my community service. It was a lot. Visiting my kids, doing the classes for my case plan, and I was at work, and it was like March 6th. Here comes the detective with the papers. It's like the termination papers that I was working hard to get. My case manager did it anyway. So it's not just her, though. There's like a whole team of people that are watching you. There's the guardian ad litem, there's your caseworker, and then there's, the attorneys and whoever else. All of them were like, no, she's done this before, and whatever. So they didn't want me to have my kids back. So I didn't skip a beat. I didn't even cry. I was like, it is what it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going to women's empowerment. I'm going to keep visiting my kids when I'm allowed to. Supervised visits on Zoom at that time because of COVID. So I was still doing visitation like that. My mom had Sam now, so I could see him at her house. And I just worked my butt off. But every day I had to do the very same thing I did the day before. I had to get up and I had to do my little prayer, and I had to get in my prayer closet. I had to, I had to pray. I had to journal. I had the same exact thing every single day. And I never let a day go by that I didn't talk to someone about it. I'm like, tell them exactly how I was feeling. I was still in therapy, so that helped a lot. My mom was very supportive, and I was just like, God did not bring me out of all of that just to leave me alone. without my children. So I just kept fighting. And that was March. July, that same guardian ad litem, the same DCF caseworker, and that same attorney, we all did a Zoom court meeting, and they all said that I could do unsupervised visits. And they were like, we're going to go ahead and close out the termination and get you back on a reunification plan. And I was like, wow. So, I had to do drug tests too. I had to call. Sometimes it was like 3 times a week. If I missed one, they had me in doing fingernail. They were doing my fingernails and testing them, and my hair follicle 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And one went back 3 months and one went back 6. And I'm like, do all the hair and nail tests you need to do. But I wouldn't even be trying to do this if I were still getting high, because I was like in a whole nother time zone,
Yeah.
a whole other world. So, but by that, that was that following October 31st, Zach came home, and then over Christmas break that same year, Sam came home, and that was 2 years ago. So here we are now. Now I'm trying to buy a house and do all the other things, but just the same things that I did in early recovery are the same things that I have to do now. If I'm today, I can feel it, and everybody around me feels it.
That's awesome. I love your story so much. And it's rare that I get to hear a story that I relate to so much. Just the struggle of losing your kids and then fighting so hard to get them back. So
Well,
I just want to tell you, I love that
to be
so
sober
much.
for yourself and your kids.
Yeah.
So it's a hard line to make, like, to draw that line, because you have to want it for you first. And people didn't understand that at first. I'm like, I can't do it for my kids. I can get, does it make sense?
Yes.
Like, I do it for my kids, but I don't do it just for my kids.
Right. I do it for me so that I can be there for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're all here. They could all tell you that they trust me. They trust my judgment. There are still little things, if I'm like gone, I won't want to say late at night because I'm a homebody and I'm at home. But if I go to my mom lives a mile from here. If I go to my mom's at like 9 o'clock at night, they're like, hey, what are you doing? Where are you at? Why are you at? What do you mean you're doing that? I'm like, I'm right here. We're all on my 360. It's okay. But I mean, they're all, they're almost grown. So I'm just glad that I got these last couple of years before they did grow up and leave, and they didn't leave home with a mother in addiction.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did too. And something that you said in your story about your son being in a group home makes me emotional, because at my new job, I'm learning about these different things, and group homes is one of them. How did he do in there? I mean, is it a behavior type thing that they have to go there for behavioral reasons?
No, they didn't have anywhere for him to go. The home that him and Sam were in at first, they had too many kids, but they kept Sam, but Zach was just too much. I missed a visit because I went to jail. And he had like a whole meltdown, cussing him out, just really, really went off they were like, we can't do this. So from then on, there was nowhere else in this county for him to go. So he went to Tallahassee into a group home. He witnessed some things that he should not have witnessed at that age. There was a man there named Kyle, Mr. Kyle, that would pray with him. They would read the Bible. Zach would pray for me. Kyle since has messaged me and is just like, I'm so, so proud of him. I'm proud of you. I'm just really glad that this turned out this way for Zach. He deserved it. But no, the group homes, they were very, very no communication skills. If I said, hey, Zach needs this, that didn't get communicated. It was like through 10 different people, because I couldn't call directly and tell them as a mom what I did raise my kids,
Right.
to that point. And other than what I did in those few months, I did take care of and love my kids. So they were very, very shocked when they didn't grow up with me being that way all the time. So they were not, they were like, what is happening? Sam was only 3, and it just it was not a good situation. When I got back here from Sarasota, they moved Zach to a home here in Panama City, the only therapeutic home that had an opening, because he had to be in a therapeutic home. And he was there for like 6 or 7 months. They wanted to adopt him. When they found out they could not adopt him, they went and dropped him off at the Heidel House, which is here. The Heidel House is like, say, you know, Susie has little Johnny and he's just being a terror. She can take little Johnny to Heidel House for 21 days to get a break. So all the bad kids in Bay County were there, and he was just there for a bed because they wouldn't let him come home. So it took me 2 weeks to get the judge to, I was like, since they've already done a home study, can I be the home that he stays in until the case is over? It was crazy, but they approved of it.
Really?
At that point, that's when he came home. You know, they were still in state care until, so that was October, November, December. So July 27th was when the case closed. So they were at my house every week. They were counting pills. Every week when they came, they counted all of their medicine.
Mm-hmm.
They took them in a room by themselves, took a picture of them, asked them questions, what was going, like, for 7 months.
Wow.
Twice a
And
week.
so what was that like when they first, because my experience was when my kids first came home, it was really hard in the beginning. Like they didn't know what to think of me. I didn't feel like I was worthy because of the things that I had done. So how was that for you guys reuniting after being separated?
Bad. It was bad. There were several times that I had to call the police. The boys, Zach would cuss me out and call me a crackhead. He moved out, 3 or 4 times a week with all of his, he would throw all of his stuff down the stairs, and he was like, I'm just going to go back and live with Mike. And I'm like, okay. I never went back at them. I never got loud. I never cried like a baby, like, oh God, you have to be nice to me. Like I never, ever, I just was like, okay, you have room to do that right now. And I let them for about 6 months. There were holes in my wall. That at that point, that's when I called the police, because I was like, I have an open DCF case. Embarrassing.
Right.
Hit them. So the cop said, actually, you can. You owe them nothing but a bed and some food. He was like, they can't just destroy your house. Next time they're doing it, we can arrest them if you want. He was like, but you don't need to feel like you can open-handed smack them. They're big boys. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, I have Sam was there, my mom was there. It was just a whole big dramatic thing. So several times that happened. I think after I shared my story, one of them is right there in the kitchen eating whipped cream.
I heard him.
After I shared my story at church, and a couple of other places in front of them, I think I did it on video one time, and my oldest son saw it and heard parts of my story that I hadn't told my kids. And he just hugged me and cried. He was like, I didn't know that happened to you. I'm so sorry. I love you. But I think the more they see me interact and help other people, and not like, there have been a couple of people that I've tried to help that have come around my kids, and they have not succeeded in any way. And they've seen me back off from those relationships. Whereas, 5 years ago, I would be like right in the drama. Like, no,
Right.
I got to go help them, or I got to, I have to have a man, or I haven't had a boyfriend. I haven't dated since I got sober. And, their whole life, they did see that. There was a lot of men coming in and out. So I did make that promise that I was going to at least give them back the time that I took from their
I
life.
love that.
They just have me. And I've gotten really used to it, and I like it.
Good. That's good, because
Little,
once you get comfortable, like nobody is going to come and steal your space or give you less than you deserve. They will
Exactly.
have to like level up to be with you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I mean they have three teenagers to go through. So
boy. So tell me about that today. How's your relationship with your kids today?
good, good. It's great. They're teenagers. So it's
Same.
my 9-year old, I'll say he absolutely adores me. My bigger kids, I'm their mom. So they're, it's, oh my God, you're so lame. You're so boring. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing something right.
Yes.
Because if I'm lame and boring, that means that you're not learning like some kind of crazy behavior. My oldest
Mhm.
son he's precious. He dabbles around in his things, and I've explained to him the consequences. He knows the consequences of his actions. He knows where he cannot bring it. He knows what he cannot do. But all I could do was listen. Sometimes when I was listening, I was actually listening, and sometimes I was like, oh my God, I just really wish these people would shut up. So I don't want to push it. It's like eggshells sometimes, like when you talk about certain things, I know they don't want to turn out like me, and they're determined not to, but they also have to know that if they want to try what they think is something socially acceptable, it might not be so much that way for them, because
Right.
I'm an addict, and 9 times out of 10 their dad is too. So it runs on both sides, and it's just not practical for them to try things that might or might not. Like, do you want to try it and find out, or just stay away from it?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
those are the only like I would call it bad conversations, but heated discussions that we have. Other than
Yeah.
that, we just roll through life. I'm a taxi driver. I'm ready for them to start driving. um, woo! But two of them have their permit, so we're
Oh boy.
we're close. I cannot wait to have a milk runner. Because
Yes.
the milk, I do not want to get in the car and go get milk.
So tell me, what do you do now? Tell everybody what you do, because I know.
What I do for work or what I do
Yes.
in general. Okay, so I worked at Florida Springs. I worked at the same rehab that I went to. There's actually
Mhm.
a whole YouTube channel, Florida Springs Wellness and Recovery. They have a YouTube channel. There's a video. My story is on there, and a lot of stuff on there about the program. Um, I had to take a step back. I still work with them. I had to take a step back because my kids needed a little bit more of my
Mhm.
attention. But I get to help people. They're actually partnering with the rescue mission here, which is like a homeless shelter, but they're turning it into, it's a homeless shelter, but they're also going to make it like a transitional from Florida Springs into Gateway, which is what it's called. It's going to be the Gateway program, but Florida Springs is going to have a whole room there. They're also going into the hospitals for the ED
Oh,
program,
yes.
to give them all of their options. And with that, you can actually go to overdose patients, or alcoholics, or anything that come in under that category, and actually be like a case manager for them for 3 months. Whereas at Florida Springs, you're in their life for 30 days and then they are out, they go out on their own. But if you meet them in the hospital and they don't choose to do the inpatient rehab, you still have connection with them, for resources, where they can go, what substance treatment they can do. And you're kind of their connect person for the community resources that they need for 90 days. And then I guess after that, you just kind of gauge it on. But yeah, that Florida Springs is expanding big time. So I get to be involved in all of that. My passion is right after rehab, because I know what I had to do and how hard it was and what kind of support system that I needed. So I would like to be that for somebody that maybe doesn't have the family part of the support system. Because a lot of people in addiction that I've met, it starts with their family, and
Mhm.
they can't or won't or don't want to go around people in their family. So I would like to be, just somebody that could give them some hope that they can do it. Just I had the, pats on the back and the thumbs up and the atta girls and the I'm proud of you. And some people just don't have as much. And
Mhm.
I know for me, it took that for me, because some days I was like, why am I even doing it? Even now, even still now, when me and my kids fight, or I come home, the house is trashed, I have to really put things back into perspective, because I say, why did I do it? Just to get treated, like a doormat by my kids. I can
Right.
get into a place of like just complaining, but also know that all I have to do is pick this up and say, you know what, I'm having a crap day. Can you please just put me back on track where I need to be? And I have a whole community of people I can do that with.
Love that so much. And you're so right. It all comes down to really just talking about how you feel no matter what. So I have one more question for you. Final thoughts. So if there's somebody out there, maybe it's a mom or a dad who's lost their kids, maybe it's somebody who's in their addiction, maybe it's just somebody that feels like they have no hope. What words of encouragement could you give to them?
Well, I would just say that, obviously the sooner the better. Just getting out ahead of it. Don't be ashamed. Don't think that it's not possible, because if you're breathing, it's possible. I attended a funeral yesterday of a friend that overdosed and died at 28. Um, that was just, it was horrible. It was horrible to have to see her family go through that. But all I could think of was that my kids could have been sitting in those seats, and it could have been me in that casket. So if you have breath in your body, then you can make it right. There's nothing that you can't make right if you're breathing and you can walk, talk, and able-bodied. Just reach out and get help. You can reach out to anybody, Sonia, me, rehab, anything. Just go to a meeting, go do something that shows that you want help, and you'll have an army behind you.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much, Tori. Your
You're
story is
welcome.
so powerful and there's so much hope in your story. So I just thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you back again at Hope Shot Recovery soon.